Whoa! This is The Illusion, reporting from somewhere on Spaceship Earth. It's time for a book review for the readers out there on Spaceship Earth. The Lost City of the Monkey God by Douglas Preston. This is a page-turner. Full-blown page-turner. It's got enough photos to satisfy because what it's about this ancient civilization they found in the last unclear-cut section of forest in the Honduras rainforest. Yup, and this happened just a couple years ago, 2012. They went into this jungle and found this lost city. And what's really interesting is they know nothing about these people. They just don't. Because, you know, the Mayans are right next door. And so it's this modern day Indiana Jones and it wasn't done by archaeologists, though there are archaeologists involved. It basically was like this guy. Basically they've been looking for this lost city for like 100 years. And there was myth about it and the local people. And it was just so stashed out in this crazy forbidden jungle. And it's foreboding, I guess would be it is. Because it's this weird jungle where the drug cartels kind of surround it. And nobody wants to go there because there's a bunch of super poisonous snakes. And it's super like deadly, and anyone who's gone and looking for the city's like died and all that kind of stuff. But this guy is like, I'm fully a believer that it's there, and he I forget what it is. I read this book about 4 months ago. But anyway, he hires this airplane with this like special ground jungle penetrating radar and finds the topography of the city. And once they find it, they get all the permission to go up there. But what's really interesting about this book is it gives the history of corporate intervention into Latin America and where like the term Banana Republic comes in. So Honduras's history is why it's been like stunted in its economic, political, and social growth is because of the banana corporations. So this is what's super interesting is about bananas. The first part that's really interesting is about bananas is Honduras is a victim of the banana. And they had found the banana and they wanted to export the banana to the United States. And so there was this big marketing campaign and it turned banana into this like super exotic delicacy in the United States in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and the banana craze went crazy. So all the International Fruit Company and all these banana barons went down there and would overthrow the government to get favorable laws. And then they would overthrow them based upon the U.S. There was just this constant overturning of the government of Honduras based upon what the government was about in regards of exporting bananas, because these fools were greedy. And so Honduras fell victim to the banana, basically. I didn't know this. So it goes into this whole thing about the bananas and how there's a dirty story with the banana, man. Who knew? I mean, yeah, that's why they're banana republics, but Honduras is the original banana republic. And Honduras has had its government constantly overthrown and changed and revolutions and this and that. So the fate of this city being discovered has been based upon which government's in charge of Honduras at the time. And so when they get the first go-ahead to go look for this thing, it's like a favorable government, and then it gets overthrown, and then they gotta wait it out to the next government, and it gets all involved with politics because the archaeological community is not down with this book or this people or these people who went and found this lost city, because it destroys a lot of their narrative about what the early Americas look like. And then the other fascinating part about this book is it goes on to talk about what happened to the early indigenous population that inhabited Latin America and North America and South America as a whole, and about how when the conquistadors came over, they brought all this disease. And that's ultimately what preserves this city, is that everyone died of the smallpox and stuff and evacuated this city. And it goes into what's really fascinating is it talks about germ warfare in the sense of what happened to the indigenous people of the New World via smallpox. And it also goes into that in this book by Nathaniel Philbrink, The Mayflower, about what really happened to the people and why the original indigenous people were so susceptible to the first explorers was disease. These guys, by the time the real waves of these conquistadors and had come to the New World, the populations were totally decimated by the first explorers who had come and wiped them all out with smallpox and these diseases. And it's horrific. And one of my things that I constantly trip about is and this book alludes to it, is how the numbers of the original people that were here in the North and South America continents are really like low. And I think they like to keep them low because it makes this glorious story, or not a glorious story, but it makes the story of like, these guys were like hospitable in a way, but not. They'd already been wiped out. Like when the Pilgrims showed up, they had already been wiped out by smallpox, for huge waves of smallpox. So when the Pilgrims showed up, these guys couldn't mount like a full resistance to it. Same thing happens in Central America, and it gets into that a lot. So it's pretty good historical narrative, a lot of interesting facts in there. And I'm just paraphrasing this. But what gets real interesting is, so these guys go up and they go do the first exploration of the city, and they find the artifacts to prove that this civilization was there, because it's all buried by the jungle, right? And these guys are all worried about the clear cutters coming up, because all the McDonald's cattle are eating up the forest. It's just so interesting. It gets into the whole thing about deforestation, and just, it's so funny that they're like, it's not funny. They're deforesting the stuff for all this unhealthy food that's killing the people up in the north. It's just so ironically twisted. The humans are crazy. They're crazy. And so they're worried about the deforestation, but when they find this city, it gives Honduras all this like this pride of the Hondurans, because they have this like treasure that the world doesn't know about, one of the last hidden civilizations. And so the new president steps up the thing to keep it all like safeguarded. And what's real interesting is that all these people go up there and they get bit by the sand flea. I believe it's a sand flea, something like that. And they get bit by it, and it's this weird stuff that's like super uncurable. But apparently, this book really turns into be a book about germ warfare, and how the interesting twist of this civilization disappears because of the original germ warfare of the smallpox, and that ultimately what these people have found up there is there's this sand flea that has this germ in it, or something, parasite. It's not a parasite, but it bites you and it causes this ulcer, and it's basically uncurable. But it's all over the world, but it only like inhabits like the impoverished populations of the world. But it's like, and so the pharmaceutical corporations aren't investing any money to like combat this stuff because the people who would use it can't pay for it, and it's spreading around the world. And these guys went in there and got it, and then the whole last part of the book's about their journey to try to find the cures for this thing that they get, and they can't cure it. It's like, you know, and it has to do with like these crazy diseases, and that this is the disease that could wipe out humanity, because the pharmaceutical and engineering people and all the people who are supposed to study this stuff and keep us all healthy are ignoring this because there's no money to be made in getting the people sick. And apparently, like, huge swaths of the impoverished people of this planet have been bitten by these things, and they have these ulcers on them. But there's this weird thing where if I guess that like it's pretty prevalent over there in the war-torn Middle East and stuff. But what they do there is they will, because if it bites your face, it'll cause this giant ulcer. But if you get bit early, it's sort of like, you know, chicken pox. If you can get exposed, you're immune for life. So they take their kids and have them get bit, like, especially the girls, like get bit like in a lower extremity of their body so that their face doesn't get attacked. Pretty interesting book, man. It's a page turner, and like I said, it's got a lot of pictures in it. It's a fascinating book about. Okay, you can have it. I'll go ahead, read that. So I highly recommend it. I'm giving it a 2 thumbs up. And The Lost City of the Monkey God by who's it by? Hold the book up. Douglas Preston. And Douglas Preston. Read it. Fill your head with knowledge so that you can make a hoopty YouTube video with your data. It's The Illusion signing off.